Well, I couldn't really have been set up better by Pavel. Thank you very much. In terms of relationships and connection and trust. In December, I was in New York, and I took my daughter to go ice skating at Bryant Park. And we're going around the ice, and there's lots of music and tons of people, and suddenly there's a commotion on the rink. And I look over about 30 feet away, there's a guy, and he's gone down on one knee, and he's looking up, and he's clearly just proposed. And everybody has stopped, and they're looking at her. And we can see, we can feel her emotions as she goes from shock and disbelief to happiness and then radiant love. And she says, yes. And we all cheer. Did you feel that? Because I still get goosebumps. Has anybody here actually been and seen a proposal happen? Lots of nods. So do you remember that shared joy and excitement? Or maybe you're actually feeling for the guy and the anxiety that he was feeling down on one knee. Well, that's empathy. And in describing that event, I actually deliberately triggered the mirror neurons in your brain, which are activated when you see or even hear about something going on with somebody else. You mimic it to a lesser degree. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and feel what they are feeling. And so as that emotion is triggered, you feel it too. And we are empathetic beings. We care about each other, even people that we've never met before. But where empathy has been missing is the workplace. I was talking recently to Anita, a senior HR executive, and she was asking me how that she can get her middle managers, and she has 100 of them, to treat their teams more like human beings. And those were her exact words. We have not been treating people in the workplace with empathy, and our relationships, our productivity, and our results have suffered as a result. But what am I doing talking to you about empathy? You might have noticed I'm a Brit. I come from a land of stiff upper lips. It's a national policy to squash our emotions. We keep calm and we carry on. But I have actually lived in 4 other countries, including now the US. And in order to be successful, I have had to put myself in other people's shoes and understand what they are experiencing so that I can fit in and acclimate. But the workplace can be a pretty unempathetic place. And about 18 months ago, I was having lunch with a friend of mine, Laura. She's a SVP at an ad agency. And she told me that she'd been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. And she's the breadwinner of her family. She has a 9-year-old kid. And she was worried about losing her job because she needed the health care. And she wanted to ask for workplace flexibility so that she could have the chemo treatments and then be working from home. But when she asked her boss, there was pushback. And they said, well, hang a second, but what if other people want the same kind of flexibility that you're asking for? Wow. The thing is, I don't think Laura's boss and I don't think Anita's managers are bad people. I don't think they treat people like that in their personal lives. This isn't personal, this is business. But why would we treat people differently in our work lives, in the business place? I think partly it's to do with the fact that it's a transaction. We're being paid. And also, for the last 100 years, we have thought that money was the sole motivator. Well, there's all kinds of data to prove that that's not the case. We know that flexibility is important, and purpose, and autonomy. But at the same time, we're trying to adapt the workplace in order to deal with these changes and understand how we can actually make it work better. But at the same time, we're dealing with a lot of changes to do with technology. Technology is speeding everything up so much. It's interconnecting us in ways that we have never imagined before. And it is blurring boundaries between work and play, between real and virtual. And the speed at which we're doing things it's changing everything. The length of time that companies used to be on the S&P 500 used to be 50 years. It is now 15 and decreasing. Companies all over the world are having to transform themselves, disrupt themselves, in order not to go out of business. And how about each of you? How have you been actually understanding how the technology is changing how you work? It used to be pretty linear and predictable. You could forecast out 12 months. And now it's much more fluid, much more iterative. And so we need to have different ways of doing things. We need different skills in order to be able to work effectively. And in fact, you might have already seen that leadership needs to be different. It used to be the sort of command and control from the top. And that's now too linear and slow because managers and their teams need to be able to be responsive and flexible. So responsibility is being pushed down and out through organizations. And at the same time, we need to be collaborating. There's been a lot of talk about collaboration. And that's so critical in order to be able to work closely, to be able to be effective. And people need to feel safe. They need environments where there is trust. And that happens when we have the cultures. And employers are having to nurture cultures that are going to allow people to be able to take risks, to brainstorm, to collaborate closely. Tom was a 28-year-old, and he was working in a company. He enjoyed what he was doing. But there were certain things about how the company operated which didn't sit that well with him. And he wanted to speak up, but he realized he couldn't do without being fired. What did he do? He went and got another job. And his boss rallied to try and get him to stay, but it was too late. And employers really of course, they want their employees to stay. They want that continuity. But at the same time, employees are very aware of the uncertainty of their jobs. And so loyalty is being redefined because employees want commitment from their employer to help them upskill to stay competitive. Terry is a cybersecurity expert, and he's ambitious. He wanted to get a new certification for his job. And he went to his boss. Boss turned him down. Said, "You don't need that certification for this current job." Why? What do you think his reaction was? "You're not investing in my future? I'm out." And it's not just about leadership or culture or loyalty. So much is changing. All of these things are happening together, and everything is evolving at the same time. Empathy is the skill that you need in order to be able to be successful under these new conditions. Pam is the CEO of a toxic waste cleanup company, and she was having a lot of intergenerational issues. And the productivity was really suffering with a lot of conflict. And she said to me, "We were trying to bend our millennials to our boomer way of doing things, and it wasn't working." So we talked about empathizing with everybody's perspectives, including the millennials. And what she discovered was she started having a sense of the discomfort they were feeling. They weren't feeling valued. They weren't feeling included. She started to sense their frustration because they were the ones on the front line cleaning up the dangerous spills. And they weren't being listened to, and they were talking to the customers, and they had great feedback and ideas, but nobody was listening. And she also understood that they were ambitious. They wanted to grow, and they were interested in having more explicit feedback so that they could develop their potential. So taking an empathetic approach, she appointed one of the emerging leaders onto their leadership committee. And therefore, they could share their ideas and be part of the leadership. She also went from a one-year annual performance review, and as Justin was saying, to these very frequent check-ins, weekly check-ins. And that was very helpful for the millennials particularly to coach them and help them navigate these new conditions and also help them develop their potential. And the results were fantastic. Productivity has increased enormously, and cooperation and communication has too. Empathy helps us connect and build trust and deepen those relationships that we really need so that we can collaborate and communicate effectively, particularly when people are working remotely. Otherwise, how on earth are you going to figure out whether why something is up? Are they having an issue at home? Are they struggling with a product? Or maybe they just need better technical support. CVS Health is a very large company that takes this approach with how they manage people. They call it leading with heart. And it doesn't mean they coddle their employees, far from it. They expect a lot, but when somebody doesn't meet their objectives, their response is thoughtful support. They say, well, what's going on with you? I know you can do better. How can I help? They believe that their emphasis on purpose and empathy brings in an additional $30 billion in revenues. So why is empathy the essential piece of this puzzle? Well, we're going to do a little exercise. I'm going to make you work for this too. Okay, so I want people to get in pairs, please. So there's somebody sitting next to you. All right, now you have to think of something that you can share with this person you've never met before, potentially. And I want you to think of something difficult that happened over the last 4 to 6 weeks at work. So a difficult customer situation, maybe something was going on with your boss, or had a difficult connection with a colleague, something like that. Okay, so you're going to take it in turns, and the person with the shortest hair is going to speak first. Okay, wait. Okay, so what's going to happen is the first person is going to share, but, and this is a big part, the other person who is listening may not react at all. Nothing. No nodding, no nothing. Just complete stone face. I want no smiling, nothing. Okay, stone-faced, and then we're going to swap. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Go. Okay. Okay, that was a reaction. Okay. So how was that? That was hard, right? It's a lot harder than you think. I've actually done that for 7 minutes, and it's so painful. It's incredible. So it's surprisingly tough. I mean, when you're the one who is speaking, it's really hard not to have the other person react. I mean, some people go like, but yeah, but it's hard not to have someone appear to reject, what you're saying. And when you're listening, it's also hard not to show someone that you get it, that you understand how they felt, that they were going through something, right? We are empathetic beings. Dutch primatologist Frans de Waal said, empathy is our second nature. That's who we are as human beings. And empathy it may be called a soft skill, but it actually makes us stronger. It puts us in a stronger position because we're more aware and understand the other person. And it's actually working against our human nature, the absence of empathy in the workplace that has caused all kinds of issues. So how does it work? Well, remember those mirror neurons? Well, what happens is they get activated when you, not only when you yourself feel something, but when you see something going on, an emotion with somebody else, but to a lesser degree, so it doesn't prevent you from doing something. And according to Dr. Helen Rice, who's right here at Harvard Medical School, she sort of says that the way that those reactions motivate and teach us how to act. They teach us to do something about it. So if the emotion that we see and we feel is pain, then we learn from those reactions to both avoid that pain, but also move to help the person who is in pain. And that helping behavior not only makes us feel good, but it also means that it drives us to inspire that behavior in others, because we might be the one who's feeling the pain next time. She says, the way she describes it is that this behavior actually is the basis in all human relationships for collaboration, cooperation, and reciprocity, which ultimately determine the survival of the human species, not just our teams. But we're not used to using it in the workplace, and so we need to understand it a little more in order that we can practice it and use it there. So there are 3 components, and the first one is cognitive empathy, or thinking empathy, and that is perspective taking. It's understanding that the other person has their own way of seeing and thinking about the world, and also using your own imagination and curiosity to put yourself in their position and understand it. It's like you're going to buy a gift for your mother, and you think about what she would like. The second is affective empathy, or feel. It's that shared emotional response, when you're there in it with them. So you think about, you find this vase that you think your mother would like. Yeah, oh, she's going to love it. I can imagine that, nice. And then empathetic concern is about acting upon that. It's about doing something about it. You buy the vase for your mother. And if somebody is, like a friend of yours is going through a bad time, you take them to the movies. And this pattern we go through all the time in our daily lives, but we don't necessarily use it in the workplace. And empathy, your capacity for empathy can be expanded as well as learning to apply it in the workplace. For example, a number of doctors were taught for just 3 hours. They were given some training on empathy, and then they went out on their rounds to visit patients. And the patients felt more at ease, better cared for, and they felt that the doctors understood their concerns much better. So what can we do in order to expand our capacities for empathy and apply them in the workplace? Well, first of all, we need to recognize how we go through that and then apply it. In terms of recognizing, if we are thinking about how a colleague may like, hang on a second, I've got to get this the right way around now we've seen Pavel. Call of Duty versus World of Warcraft. I get that right? Or maybe they've got a little kitten and you're a dog lover. Or maybe you're starting a video chat with someone and you're thinking about what perspective do they have? Do they think about the world the same way that I do? And if not, how is that different? It's putting yourself in their shoes so you can try and understand where they're coming from. And then we have to identify the emotion that they're feeling. And when it comes to that, it's not that easy. We can use observation. We can be sort of detectives for that. And this woman, I mean, is she frustrated? Is she concerned? Or does she have indigestion? It's not that obvious. So, when we think about it and we're on that video call and we're trying to work out, and we're looking at the eyes, there's some body language, and this is why video becomes really important when we're working with remote workers, so we can actually get more information and more clues about what's going on with them. And we also listen to their voice and the intonations and the hesitations, so we can try and understand, and we can ask questions to check. But when we actually recognize, when we feel that emotion, that we feel the excitement of that video game, when we see the joy about getting the kitten, and when we sense the frustration that somebody is feeling in that video call, then when you actually feel that with them, just like when you get carried away with movies, ride with it. Recognize that you're connecting with what they're feeling, which may not be what you would feel in that situation. That doesn't matter. But if you connect consciously with how they're feeling, that's when you're actually expanding your capacity to empathize and practicing it too. And then how do you act? Do you play that video game with them again? Do you buy the kitten a little toy? Do you play with it? And how do you act with that person on the video call when you actually understand how they're feeling? Maybe you sort of, show that you connect with what they're going through. You help them feel safe. You ask more questions. Those are things that you can do at that moment to really make sure that you're in it with them, you're going to understand them more. But there are things that can get in our way, that can stop us, and block us from able to understand where people are and what they're feeling. And that's particularly when we don't understand their particular point of view, or we're judging them. For example, my mother, her car was smashed into overnight last summer. And when I was talking to her on the phone about it, I judged her. I thought she was overreacting. She wasn't hurt. The car looked like it would drive, and my sister and I offered to pay for the repairs. But when I realized that she actually was very upset, I recognized that it was actually because the car was her way of going to her yoga classes, to go and see her friends. She was reacting to the fact that she could be cut off from her community. So if we can bring an open mind and recognize that if we step away from our judgments, we'll be able to empathize much better. So you can imagine in all our interactions how that's going to help us do better at work, in everybody that we're dealing with, particularly with people who are working remotely. So how do we apply it? Well, first of all, we need to have that base foundation, which Justin and Pavel were talking about in particular. We need to have those relationships. So when we have, with friends and family, we can guess how they're going to react. We know them. We've got shared experience. We've got common ground. But what about people in the office that we don't necessarily know as well? I was just at the gym, and I saw these two guys. One goes up to the other person, and he's wearing a Basketball Hall of Famer t-shirt. And they're clearly both great fans. And after a short animated conversation, they hug, do a big high five, and off they go. And it was extraordinary because two completely random strangers suddenly had this very strong mutual bond. And I guarantee it, if those two worked on a project now, that bond would help them collaborate better and get over any kind of misunderstandings. So those are the type of bonds that we really need to develop in the office. And you can do that around the water cooler. You can do that. My favorite is, I think somebody mentioned it earlier, happy hour over video chat. Definitely to be recommended. But you can do it anywhere. And you can be connecting on TV shows or mother-in-law stories or whatever it might be. Whatever's going to help you better understand who you're working with, connect with them emotionally so you can recognize their emotion, get it right. And so when we're able to empathize better with people, how do we actually apply it in the workplace? When we're starting meetings, to think about, what do I know about this person? How do they view the world? What common ground do we share that we can connect on? And then it comes to trying to understand their emotional state. And this is where we're going to have another short exercise. Okay? So we're only going to have time for 2 of these, but I want you to guess. What kind of emotion? Come up with one word, just keep it yourself, but one word in terms of what emotion we think that this woman is feeling. Were you right? How about this one? Very good, yes. The point is that you need to try and understand what people are going through and check in. And that may change. You might even say, let's do the video, this video meeting another time because they might be distracted. But ask questions, listen deeply. Affirm that somebody actually heard you and you understood what they meant. That kind of deeper connection, that kind of deeper listening is really going to help. And then last of all, what do you do? How do you act differently as a result? And it's not just in video chat, it's also in email and in texts. These are clumsy media. And so really making sure that you're reacting in a way that's going to take into account what you know about the person and what emotion you think that they're feeling. And empathy, it's needed more than ever these days because we have fewer opportunities to connect on a deeper basis right now in the office. So actually making a conscious effort to adopt empathy is going to be of great benefit. Working with empathy is not hard. Working without empathy is. It comes to us naturally, and working in unempathetic environments does not. So it's up to us to embrace empathy and practice it every day in the office. It's up to us to connect, to listen, to share. And it's up to us to think, feel, and act with empathy. Thank you.